All right, today we're going to be data detectives. We're on a mission to crack a case that stumps businesses and economists all the time. How to predict the future. And our crime scene? Well, it's hidden right inside the data.
So here's our case file for today. First, we'll get to know our data. Then, we'll use some cool tools to visualize the hidden story it's telling us. After that, we'll dive into a simple but really powerful prediction technique. We'll walk through the whole process, check our work, and then you'll have your very own forecasting toolkit. This is our roadmap from mystery to prediction. Let's get started.
First up, predicting with your data. You know, every good investigation kicks off with understanding the evidence. And for us, the evidence is our data. So, what exactly are we investigating here? We're looking at something called time series data. And all that means is it's a bunch of data points that are collected over time. You see this stuff everywhere. Think about the daily sales numbers at your favorite coffee shop, the monthly rainfall in your area, or even the stock market bouncing around minute by minute. It's absolutely packed with clues about what might happen next. Okay, it's time to actually see the hidden story in our data. And for that, we need to open up the Detective's Toolkit. Our first and honestly most important tool is the time plot. Think of this as our first sweep of the crime scene. We're just plotting our data against time to get the big picture, the main story. Are things generally going up, down, or are they just kind of flat? This is where we find our first big leads. And check this out. This plot of sales data shows it perfectly. What's the first thing you notice? There's a really clear upward movement over the years, right? That's our first major clue, a consistent long-term trend. The story is already starting to take shape.
Next tool up is the seasonal plot. This one helps us spot the data's habits, those patterns that keep happening over and over again. It's like noticing a suspect always goes to the same coffee shop every Tuesday. Does a retail store always get a huge sales bump around the holidays? The seasonal plot is how we find out for sure.
And wow, look at how clearly this plot shows that pattern. You can see sales just spike in Q4 every single year. That's not a coincidence, right? That is rock-solid evidence of seasonality. We've just uncovered a predictable rhythm in our data.
Now, if we want to get an even closer look, we can use the seasonal subseries plot. This is basically our zoom lens. So we know there's a peak in Q4, but this tool lets us break down each of those seasons to see if the pattern itself is changing. For example, are those Q4 sales peaks getting even higher every year? This plot gives us that extra layer of detail. Okay, here's a bit more of a specialized tool, the lag plot. It helps us look for something called autocorrelation, but I just like to think of it as data momentum. It answers a really simple question. Is today's value related to yesterday's value? If sales were high yesterday, are they likely to be high again today? The lag plot shows us that connection. And here's what that momentum looks like in the wild. See that strong diagonal line? That is a huge clue. It's telling us that one day's value is super related to the next. That relationship is a really powerful piece of the puzzle when we start trying to make predictions. All right, detective, we've gathered our clues. We've seen the patterns. Now it's time to make a deduction. Let's actually make a prediction. So we've got this clear trend, right? The data is consistently heading in one direction. The big question is, how do we use that to make a simple, educated guess about what's going to happen next? Well, let me introduce you to the drift method. It sounds fancy, but the logic behind it is just so simple. Seriously. First, you find your very first data point. Then you find your very last data point. You draw a straight line connecting them, and then you just keep drawing that same line out into the future. That's it. And this quote just nails the whole idea. The drift method's big assumption is that the average change we saw over the entire history of our data is probably a pretty good guess for how things will keep changing. It's a simple idea, but it's great for capturing that long-term trend we found earlier.
Okay, so let's put all these pieces together. This is the official Data Detective's workflow.
So here it is, the 5-step process that you can follow every time. 1. Visualize your clues using plots. 2. Analyze the patterns you see, the trends, the seasons. 3. Pick a forecasting method that makes sense for those patterns. 4. Make the actual forecast. And 5, and this is probably the most important step, interpret your result. Understand what it's telling you and what it's not telling you.
We've made our prediction, but every good investigation has a debrief, right? It's time for a reality check on our results.
And there it is. The solid line, that's our history, the real data we investigated.
And that dotted line stretching out into the future, that's our forecast, our prediction from the drift method. It just continues that same upward slope we found, giving us a pretty solid guess for future sales.
Now, a good detective always knows the limits of their tools. The drift method is awesome because it's super simple and works great when you have a nice, consistent trend. But it's got some big limitations. Since it only looks at the very first and very last points, it can totally miss recent changes in the trend. And as you can see, that straight line completely ignores all those seasonal peaks and valleys we found. It's a fantastic starting point, but it's not a crystal ball.
So, we're wrapping up our investigation. It's time to close the case and give you your brand new forecasting toolkit. So what are the key things to write down in your detective's notebook? Number 1, always visualize your data first. That's where the clues are. 2, keep an eye out for the big patterns, like trends and seasonality. 3, a simple tool like the drift method can be a great first step for forecasting. And finally, always be aware of your method's limitations. It tells you how much you can really trust your own prediction.
So, when should you pull these tools out? Look, the visualizations, you should use them for any time series project. Period. It's a non-negotiable first step. And the drift method? Pull that out as your simple, go-to baseline anytime you spot a clear, consistent trend. It's a great first guess.
So, we've cracked one case today. We've seen how looking carefully at the past can give us a really solid, educated guess about the future. You've got the tools now, so the only question left is, what story is hidden in your data?